Greetings, microscopists. My name is Eric Miller. I'm from Instructinate, and today I am at Materials Analytical Services in Suwanee, Georgia, and this one's kind of weird. So the other day I picked up this trash can, and underneath it was this tiny dead lizard. And hey, I'm a microscope nerd, so I believe this is a baby anole, which is a very common lizard in these parts. And this is what they look like when they're alive. And this is what this specific one looks like under a light microscope. What I found interesting were the fuzzy toe pads he had. Now, there are a number of lizards out there, mostly in the gecko family, that have these sticky toe pads that allow them to climb up and down all sorts of crazy, impossible places. I did not realize that anoles had these same features on their toes, even though I've seen them climbing around some really crazy places. So these fiber things here are too small to get a good look at in the light microscope, so we're going to need to switch over to the SEM. Of course, the big microscope nerds out there are going to ask, well, how did you put this huge biological sample like that and image it in your electron microscope with no variable pressure feature? That's a great question, and I can tell you it wasn't easy. And if enough people beg me down in the comments, maybe I'll put together a video explaining how I went about imaging this sample, and I can tell you it wasn't easy. Anyway, let's see what these fuzzy toe pads look like. Here we can see that each little section of toe pads look kind of like a toothbrush. So these micro hairs are called setae. These particular setae are about 2 micrometers thick and about 30 micrometers long. By comparison, the hair on your head is about 50 micrometers thick. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of these setae on each of these toe pads. And each digit of this lizard's foot has around 10 to 15 of these pads, and multiply that by 20 toes. That is a boatload of setae. That's interesting and all. But what's even more interesting is what we see when we go to a higher magnification. And as we see at the end of each one of these setae, we see a bunch of these creepy little finger-looking things. And so what the heck are these? And what do they even do? So I'm going to flip this around on you, and I'm going to tell you these are not setae, these are called spatulae. They're only about 100 nanometers thick and maybe 500 or so nanometers long. So these fingery spatulae things are what enable the anole or other lizard species to climb up impossibly smooth things. How so? Van der Waals forces. I guess we've understood what van der Waals forces were for over a century now, but we've only recently come to understand the part that it plays in these lizards' climbing abilities. So without getting too nerdy on everybody, the simple explanation is that van der Waals forces are kind of like a static electric charge that causes two things to kind of stick together, but only on the nano scale. So when a fairly small and not very heavy lizard drops millions of these little spatulae down on a surface, the atoms in the setae and the surface will form a very weak non-chemical bond. I mean, this bond is super weak, but if you get enough of them going, they'll eventually be able to handle the weight of something small, like an anole. I don't know about you, but these little spatulae with the flares on the end remind me a lot of those Martians from the 1952 War of the Worlds movie. Another interesting thing I noticed about this lizard are its scales. These lizard scales are completely covered in short, tiny setae. I mean, isn't that crazy? I assumed lizard scales to be smooth or mostly smooth, but no. One other kind of funny thing is stuck to one of this lizard's toes were these two things here, which some of you other microscope nerds might recognize as scales from a moth or butterfly wing. I'm just thinking about this lizard walking around and saying, oh man, I stepped in some moth scales again. Gross. So the next time an anole or some other friendly wall climbing gecko comes up to you and says, hey man, I want a hug, whatever you do, do not think about the millions of tiny nanoscale creepy lizard fingers that it's going to be touching you with. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Special thanks to Materials Analytical Services in Suwanee, Georgia, and their cool microscope. And check out my website, Instructinate.com, to be kept up to date on all the latest developments in the world of electron microscopy. Thanks a lot, guys, and we'll see you around the lab.